Bikers stormed the street, destroying Frank Miller's garden and dousing it with green paint, confident they were dealing with a defenseless old man. "Well, Grandpa, where's your army?" mocked their leader. Frank calmly replied, "You've just made a big mistake." They had no idea that one move would change everything. But let's start from the beginning. On a quiet street in a small Arizona town stood Frank Miller's home. A modest white-painted house with a small porch and a cozy garden was marked by a proudly waving American flag on a tall flagpole. Frank, a silver-haired elderly man, seemed calm and serene. Each morning, he tended to his garden, lovingly cultivated in memory of his late wife. Vibrant roses, lavender bushes, and a small patch of vegetables framed his yard neatly. On the terrace, a display case showcased his military medals. Sunlight gleamed on them, often catching the attention of passers-by. For Frank, this was a sacred space, a tribute to his service and the comrades he'd lost. But that day began with a roar. Something was wrong. A gang of bikers roared onto the street, their 5 powerful bikes screeching to a halt right in front of Frank's house. Dust swirled in the air, settling over the flowers. The gang's leader, a burly red-haired man with a beard, laughed loudly as he removed his helmet. His name was Red, infamous for his aggression and mockery. He stepped closer, sizing up the house and garden like a predator eyeing its next victim. "Whoa, check it out, guys! This old man put his toys on display!" Red jeered, pointing to the medal case. Frank, watering his flowers, raised his head. His gaze was calm but firm. "These medals aren't toys, son. They're memories of my comrades," he said quietly. "Comrades? Ha! And where are they now? All tucked away in some nursing home?" Red cackled, turning to his gang for approval. "No, they're at the cemetery, a place I doubt you've matured enough to reach," Frank retorted with a faint smirk. The response silenced a few bikers, but not Red. He stepped closer, spitting on the ground at Frank's feet. "You've got jokes, old man. Let's see how funny you are after we fix up your garden." Red waved his hand, and the gang sprang into action. One biker knocked over a bucket of water, soaking a flower bed. Another tore roses from the bush, grinning as he pretended to dance flamenco with them clamped in his teeth. Frank stood still, unyielding, but his eyes narrowed. "Enough," he said softly. "Enough? Are you serious?" Red roared with laughter. "You think someone's gonna come save you? These people?" He pointed at the onlookers who had gathered but kept their distance, unwilling to interfere. Some passers-by filmed the scene, their phones held aloft. A young couple hurried away with their child, while an elderly neighbor pulled his curtain shut. "Look, old man, you're a star now," one biker sneered, waving his phone. Red turned to the medal case, curling his lips in mockery. "And this? Let's give your shrine a makeover." He grabbed a can of green paint and poured it over the medals. The toxic green dripped down the glass, staining the case. Frank sighed and shook his head. "You know, son, I tried being polite. That was a mistake." "Oh, really? What are you gonna do, old man? Call the cops?" Red sneered. Frank met Red's gaze directly and gave a slight smile. "No," he said calmly. "I'm calling my friends." The chapter ended in silence, broken only by the distant sound of approaching engines. Red waved his hand and a skinny biker with a snake tattoo grabbed a metal rod. Laughing wildly, he began slashing through Frank's roses. "Too tidy, old man! Let me shake things up for you!" he shouted, twirling the rod like a saber. Another biker, a burly man with a beard, tugged fiercely at the flagpole holding the American flag, treating it like a personal trophy as he struggled to yank it from the ground. "Hey, old man, what do you have to say now?" Red sneered, picking up an old photograph from the terrace table and tearing it in half. Frank watched silently as his garden and cherished memories of his wife were desecrated, his outward calm betrayed only by his clenched fists, which trembled with suppressed fury. Red approached him, green paint in hand. With a wicked grin, he poured it onto Frank's shoulder. "How's the new look, Grandpa? Why don't you take a stroll and show off your masterpiece?" The gang erupted in laughter, while onlookers stood frozen at a safe distance. Some filmed the chaos on their phones, unwilling to intervene. Frank slowly wiped the paint from his arm. "Are you done?" he asked quietly. "Done? No, old man, we're just getting started," Red bellowed, turning to his crew. At that moment, the low rumble of powerful engines filled the street. The bikers froze as 3 black SUVs rounded the corner and came to a halt in front of Frank's house. Men in sharp suits and dark sunglasses stepped out in unison. One of them approached Frank and saluted. "Mr. Miller, we're here as requested," he said crisply. Red's smirk vanished. His face paled as he staggered back a step. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. Frank allowed himself a small smile. "Take a guess, boys." Just when the bikers thought they had gotten their fill of destruction, Frank, paint dripping from his shoulder, stepped forward. His expression remained stoic, but his eyes had turned icy, sharp as steel. "You've just made a huge mistake, son," he said, locking eyes with Red. Confident in his dominance, Red burst into laughter, turning to his gang. "Did you hear that, boys? Grandpa's threatening me. What's next? Is he going to call his grandson or report us to Social Security?" He doubled over, clutching his stomach in mock amusement. Frank, saying nothing, reached into his pocket and produced a small metallic transmitter. Calmly, he pressed a button. A tense silence followed. "What's that? A remote for your TV? Gonna switch us to cartoons?" Red jeered, though his confidence began to waver. The deep growl of engines shattered the quiet. The bikers turned to see 3 massive black SUVs glide to a stop at the end of the street. With the precision of a panther's prowl, the vehicles parked before Frank's house, and several men in tailored suits stepped out simultaneously. The crowd of onlookers stood frozen in awe. A woman's hushed voice broke the silence. "Is that the FBI?" One of the suited men, tall and composed, strode up to Frank and saluted crisply. "Mr. Miller, we've arrived as per your signal." The smug confidence drained from Red's face. His eyes widened as though someone had just informed him his bike had been flattened by a bulldozer. "Who the hell are you?" he croaked, swallowing hard. Frank, unbothered, reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather ID wallet. Slowly, he opened it, revealing a golden badge emblazoned with the words, "Director, United States Intelligence Service." "My name is Frank Miller. I lead one of the most influential intelligence organizations in this country, and you boys just crossed the line." The bikers were rooted in place. Even the loudest of them, the one who had been slashing roses with his rod, recoiled as if doused with a bucket of ice water. "This has to be a joke, right?" Red stammered, struggling to piece together his shattered confidence. Frank took another step forward, his calm demeanor almost palpable. "Ever stop to think that some people you bully might be far more dangerous than you imagine? No? Well, son, it's time to learn the hard way." For a moment, terror flickered across Red's face, but he quickly masked it with a strained grin. "It was just a joke, old man. A misunderstanding," he muttered. "Oh, I love jokes," Frank replied, glancing at the agent nearest to him. "Especially the kind that come with serious consequences. Check them. Let's see what we're dealing with." Without a word, the agents advanced on the bikers, scanning them with handheld devices. The gang exchanged panicked glances, realizing they were trapped. The crowd began to murmur. A few people clapped, while others recorded the scene on their phones. Red, the self-proclaimed king of the street, stood defeated, shoulders slumped. "What now?" he muttered. Frank smirked. "Oh, I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to think about it. Behind bars." The chapter ended with the sharp click of handcuffs snapping into place. The suited men surrounded the bikers with swift, practiced movements. Every action was efficient and precise. When one burly biker with a chain tried to resist, 2 agents subdued him in seconds, leaving him groaning in pain. Red stood motionless, his bravado melting faster than the green paint on Frank's shoulder. One by one, his companions were cuffed and led away. "This is insane! It was just a joke!" One biker protested, his voice drowned out by the metallic clinks of the cuffs. The lead agent turned to Red, his voice steady and cold. You're under arrest for vandalism, assault, and public disorder." "But we didn't. We just—" Red's feeble protests trailed off. The once silent crowd erupted into cheers and applause. A neighbor shouted, "Way to go, Mr. Miller! Show those punks!" Frank approached Red slowly, his hands still stained with green paint. He looked at the defeated biker with a measured gaze. "You know, son," Frank began, his tone calm but firm, "in life, you should always remember one thing. You never know who you're messing with. Next time, think before you act." Red said nothing. His face had turned pale, his eyes glued to the ground. Neighbors and bystanders filmed the scene with enthusiasm, their phones capturing the extraordinary moment. An elderly man, calm and composed, orchestrating the takedown of a biker gang with effortless authority. "Now that's badass!" a teenager shouted. "This grandpa's cooler than any superhero!" The following morning, Frank's house became a beacon of community spirit. Dozens of people arrived with shovels, plants, and soil to restore his garden. Someone brought fresh roses, while another replaced the defaced flag. "We couldn't just sit by after you gave us such a show," an elderly woman said, handing Frank a basket of cookies. Frank thanked everyone with a warm smile, clearly unused to such attention. Once the garden was nearly restored, he stood in the middle of his yard, surveyed the crowd, and quipped, "If anyone else gets the idea to mess with my garden, I'm always happy to welcome new guests. I have a special button for them." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Frank Miller's story quickly became a sensation. The video of the biker's arrest spread like wildfire across social media, garnering millions of views. The gang of Hell's Wolves would never forget the day they chose the wrong man to cross. Their leader, Red, disappeared from town, and the group never reconvened. As for Frank, he went back to his quiet life, tending to his garden and greeting every passerby with a friendly nod. His composure and dignity became legendary, his name a reminder that justice will always prevail.